Hello, my name is Sophie Yarker and I'm a Research Associate at the University of Manchester in the Sociology Department. And I'm the author of Creating Spaces for an Ageing Society, the Role of Critical Social Infrastructure. Social infrastructure are the physical spaces and places in our communities where we can have social interactions and develop social connections. These can be spaces such as libraries, parks, shops and cafes, as well as the more mundane spaces such as banks, post offices and bus stops. The book reviews existing literature on how older people use spaces of social infrastructure. It looks at the different spaces that people are using and how these spaces might be important to older people. It looks at the different types of social interactions they're having in those spaces, and then also thinks about the different types of connections and relationships that develop from those interactions. Based on the literature, the book makes the argument that older people need a diversity of different types of social connections to support aging in place and to help them feel connected to their neighbourhoods and communities. It also makes the argument that older people need a diversity of different spaces of social infrastructure in their neighbourhoods to allow them to have these types of social connections. One important type of social connection and interaction for older people are intergenerational encounters. In Chapter 6 of the book, I focus on questions of everyday intergenerational encounters in shared spaces, which are the interactions between people of different generations that occur outside of the home and outside of the family unit. Much of the existing literature around this considers how people of different generations are brought together through planned projects and programs that are specifically designed to foster intergenerational connections. So examples of this might include oral history projects where a younger person might interview someone older than them about their life, or where older people provide mentorship to younger people at sports and leisure facilities. There are also examples of spaces being purposefully designed to bring different generations together, such as the co-location of nurseries with libraries. The benefits of positive intergenerational interactions are well known. For individuals, this can lead to increased skills, confidence, and the development of new knowledge. And at a community and societal level, mixing of people of different ages in public spaces can help create greater awareness and understanding of the different needs of generations and can help address ageism and discrimination. However, what is not considered so much in this literature is the more organic, fleeting, or more mundane and informal interactions that occur in everyday social infrastructure spaces, or what we also call passing places. These types of connections are particularly important for older people, as we know older people tend to spend more time in their immediate neighbourhoods than other age groups. And therefore, social connections developed in their local area can make a real difference to how older people feel connected to their community and how they feel a sense of belonging to where they live. Everyday spaces of social infrastructure are often these overlooked spaces that most of us use to some extent in our everyday life through the course of our routines, but are not particularly associated with any one age group. But they therefore have the potential to draw in a diversity of people from across the communities and a diversity of people across generations. So spaces such as shops, banks, post offices, libraries, leisure centres, all cater for different needs. So therefore, they have a crucial role to play in facilitating everyday intergenerational connections. The types of interactions that occur in these spaces don't need to be particularly in-depth. They can be quite fleeting. They can also be non-verbal interactions, but they are still incredibly important in making sure different generations are seen by one another and making sure that spaces don't become exclusionary to one particular generation. However, inequalities exist across generations, and these inequalities are potentially have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Firstly, social distancing restrictions have meant reduced opportunities for people of different generations to mix in shared spaces. During the pandemic, we all experienced significant changes in how we use spaces of social infrastructure. Social distancing meant that some indoor spaces were closed off from us entirely, such as leisure centres and cafes, but we also had reduced or very limited use of public transport, some high street services such as banks, post offices, and some shops as well. This meant that we're all having much less of the informal social contact, the kind of fleeting interaction, such as opening a door for someone or recognizing somebody in your local cafe or at the bus stop, for example. This, along with some of the ageist rhetoric around older age and vulnerability during the pandemic, may potentially have widened the gap between how older people and younger people see each other and created more divisions in how different generations see each other. Secondly, the reopening of social infrastructure doesn't necessarily mean that all older people will return to using those spaces as they previously were. Research has shown that for some older people, they feel quite hesitant about using those shared spaces again, and are not as confident about re-engaging in public spaces as some younger generations might be. This could be due to worsening mobility or health issues during the pandemic, or could simply be due to loss of confidence in using those spaces. This is problematic as it could lead to further exclusion of older people from some spaces in our neighbourhoods. To address this, I think we need an infrastructural approach to post-COVID recovery. This would focus on supporting and rebuilding different types of everyday shared spaces and social infrastructure that can facilitate intergenerational encounters and connections in an everyday sense, and making sure that older people are supported in re-engaging in public spaces in their communities.